9. 7 Ninja Swords of the Mist. Alright, we're starting at rank 9. And before anyone starts yelling, let me make one thing absolutely clear. This is a list of the most broken weapons in Naruto. Even the bottom of this list is still insanely strong. So when I put the 7 Ninja Swords of the Mist at number 9, that does not mean they're weak. It just means everything above them is even more ridiculous, even more unfair, and even more cracked. Now here's the real issue with the 7 Ninja Swords. Technically, I could separate each sword and rank them individually, but honestly, only about 2, maybe 3 of these blades truly deserve a spot on a broken weapons list. The rest are carried hard by reputation and legacy. They're legendary, sure. They're iconic, absolutely. But if we're talking raw, standalone power, some of these swords just don't hit as hard as people like to pretend. So let's stop dancing around it and talk straight about these weapons. We're starting with the worst offenders. First up, Nuibari, the giant sewing needle. Yeah, it sounds brutal. You stab someone, thread a wire through their body, and tie them up like a Christmas present. Visually? Crazy. Conceptually? Dark as hell. But in practice, this thing is a nightmare to use. One wrong move, and you're basically sewing yourself into a tangled wire maze. On top of that, the needle itself has almost no killing power. It's literally just a big needle. No real cutting force, no slicing damage, just straight piercing. And let's be real, a regular kunai plus a steel wire can already do this job. The difference is, a kunai doesn't pretend to be a sword. Then there's Kabutowari, the axe and hammer combo. Yes, one of Kirigakure's legendary weapons is basically a construction tool set. On paper, the idea is actually nasty. You block with the axe, then smash with the hammer to break through anything. Defense, armor, bones, whatever. Sounds absolutely devastating. But this only works if your opponent politely blocks the axe, stands perfectly still, and waits for you to pull out the hammer and swing. In real combat, that situation almost never happens. Fights don't pause, enemies don't cooperate. And without that perfect setup, Kabutowari loses a huge chunk of what makes it scary. Shibuki, the explosive axe. Now this one at least brings serious firepower. Every single swing triggers an endless chain of explosion tags. That sounds insanely good at first. Constant blasts, non-stop pressure, absolutely destructive. Until you realize you're basically holding a live bomb with no off switch right next to your face. There's a reason the guy who used Shibuki ended up with only one eye. On top of that, this axe is massive, tank-sized, brutally heavy, and slow as hell. Devastating, sure, but it's also trying to kill you at the same time. Then there's Kubikiri Bocho. I love this thing. The butcher blade is iconic. But let's be honest for a second. Objectively speaking, it's just a sword. A very big sword. Its special ability is that it can repair itself by absorbing iron from blood. Sounds epic, looks metal as hell. But as an ability, it's honestly kind of useless. Instead of an unbreakable blade, you get a blade that fixes itself after breaking. It's huge, awkward, ridiculously heavy, and weirdly blood-hungry. Still though, it's undeniably epic. And yeah, I absolutely love it for that. Next up, Kiba, the twin lightning swords. Now this one is actually really solid. These blades conduct electricity at an absurd level and are probably some of the sharpest swords ever made. The cutting power is nasty, the lightning output is insane. But here's the thing. Anyone with lightning release can already do this with basically any sword. Sasuke does it, Killer Bee does it. The real difference is that Kiba massively amplifies the user's power. It doesn't reinvent the concept, it just cranks it up to an extremely violent, over-the-top level. But then we get to the real monsters. Samhata and Hiramekare, and this is the real reason the 7 Ninja Swords of the Mist still deserve a spot on this list. Samahata is a living creature. This thing isn't just a weapon, it's a chakra-eating beast disguised as a sword. It drains chakra from literally anything it touches and feeds its user an almost infinite supply of energy. Kisame, one of the strongest members of the Akatsuki, was able to fight evenly with Killer Bee, a perfect Jinchuriki, because of Samehada. That's how absurdly powerful it is. But Samehada is also insanely hard to use. It chooses its owner. Even Naruto couldn't hold it. The moment he tried to pick it up, it straight up stabbed his hand. If you don't have the right kind of chakra, you're not using this thing. Period. Then there's Hiramekare, the split sword. This weapon is the definition of versatility. It can transform into basically any shape you want. sword, hammer, axe, even a massive extended chakra blade. It's like a chakra blade concept, but dialed all the way up to 11. Chojuro, a shy, unremarkable guy with nothing special going on, became the 5th Mizukage just by wielding Hiramekare. This weapon isn't just powerful, it's practical, efficient, and insanely adaptable. So why are the 7 ninja swords only ranked 9th? Because 5 out of the 7 swords are either too hard to use, too dangerous to the user themselves, or just not strong enough to justify their legendary reputation. Yeah, they're creative, no doubt about that. But only Samahata and Hiramakari truly deserve to be called broken. But hey, if you think I'm wrong about the 7 ninja swords, drop a comment below. I want to see you defend them. 8. Puppets. These things are straight-up war machines, built for killing, controlled by elite puppeteers who can turn a block of wood into a living nightmare. Let's start with the basics. A puppet in the Naruto world is a full weapon system. Every joint, every finger, every single inch of that thing is designed to murder. Hidden blades inside the arms. Poison needles firing out of the mouth. Trap mechanisms packed inside the torso. Steel wires that can slice your neck clean off from a distance. A well-built puppet is basically a complete ninja, except it can't die. And the best part? You can control multiple puppets at the same time. Take Chiyo, the old lady from Sunagakure. She controlled 10 puppets at once. 10, let me say that again. 10 puppets simultaneously. Each one packed with different weapons, each one capable of using different types of techniques. And she was juggling all of them in an actual fight against Sasori. And then there's Sasori. Sasori of the Red Sand. This man invented human puppets. Puppets made from real human bodies, preserving all of their chakra and techniques even after death. Think about how insane that is. You kill a Kage, turn them into a puppet, and now you own an immortal Kage as your personal slave forever. Oh, and on top of that, he had an entire army of 100 puppets. When Sasori activates performance of 100 puppets, he's basically summoning his own personal army. Every single puppet is controlled at the same time by one man. And he didn't just flex with it, he used that army to straight up wipe out an entire country. Sasori also created Hiruko as armor, letting him fight up close without the usual weaknesses of a puppeteer. Because that's normally the biggest problem with puppet users. They're trash in close combat. They need distance to control their chakra threads. But here's where it gets really insane. Sasori didn't stop at making puppets. He turned himself into a puppet. That means he basically has an immortal body that can repair itself. So why are puppets only ranked 8th? Because their weaknesses are way too obvious. The joints. Every puppet, no matter how strong, relies on mechanical joints. Lock those joints up with anything. Iron sand, for example. And that puppet instantly becomes a useless statue. Gaara's sand can do this. The 3rd Kazekage's iron sand can absolutely do this. And you know what else counters puppets hard? Conan's paper techniques and explosion tags. Any smart enemy who targets the chakra threads or the joints can shut down an entire puppet army in seconds. On top of that, puppets require insane skill. You can't just pick one up and start using it. You need years of training just to control a single puppet properly. Controlling 10 at once like Chiyo? That's a lifetime achievement. Controlling 100 like Sasori? That's once-in-a-generation prodigy territory. Most ninja will never ever reach that level. But once you do reach it, once you truly master puppet arts, you don't need a team. You don't need backup. You're carrying an entire assault force inside a scroll. And that's why puppets, despite their very real weaknesses, still absolutely deserve a spot on this list. Now, if you think puppets should be ranked higher, if you think Sasori's 100 puppets deserve top 5, drop a comment. Or maybe you think puppets are trash because iron sand exists. Either way, I want to hear your take. 7. Sand. And no, we're not talking about regular beach sand here. We're talking about 3 versions of the same core concept that literally define the entire fighting style of the Kazekage line: regular sand, gold dust, and iron sand. 3 forms of one weapon, and each one is insanely destructive in its own way. Let's start with regular sand. Gaara's signature weapon. On the surface, it just looks like a gourd full of sand. But this sand is infused with his mother's chakra, carrying her will to protect her son even after death. That's not just emotional lore. That's a fully automatic defense system. Gaara's sand reacts faster than his own reflexes. It blocks kunai, shuriken, even high-speed taijutsu attacks without Gaara needing to see them coming. It's basically an invisible wall wrapped around him 24 hours a day. And the craziest part about sand? It's infinitely versatile. Gaara can shape it into massive hands to crush enemies. He can create a literal sand tsunami to bury entire armies alive. He can mold the sand into anything he wants. And if he ever needs more sand, he just grinds the ground beneath his feet into fresh material. As long as he's standing on land, he basically has unlimited ammo. But here's where things get really interesting. Gaara can mix other materials into his sand. He's added gold to increase weight and density. He's mixed in hail to add straight-up elemental damage. Sand isn't just sand. It's a platform that Gaara can customize depending on the fight. He tweaks it on the fly to hard counter whatever he's facing. Now let's move to gold dust, the weapon of the fourth Kazekage, Gaara's father. Gold dust is basically sand made from real gold, which makes it way heavier and way denser than regular sand. That means it hits harder, moves slower, and penetrates deeper. The fourth Kazekage used gold dust specifically to counter Gaara's sand by making it so heavy that Gaara couldn't even move it properly. And then there's iron sand, the most terrifying weapon in Tsunagakurei's history. The third Kazekage studied the sand manipulation of Shukaku's Jinchuriki and straight up said, "I want that." And he actually pulled it off. Iron sand works like regular sand, but with one massive twist. It's magnetic. That means it can bypass chakra shields. It can form gigantic structures or microscopic bullets that shred enemies from the inside. It's insanely durable, can be sharpened at will, and can deal absolutely ridiculous damage if the user wants it to. That's exactly why Sasori, after killing the third Kazekage, turned him into a human puppet. Iron sand was simply too valuable to throw away. But here's the catch with the sand series. It's limited by the user. Regular sand demands a Jinchuriki-level presence or someone with absolutely insane chakra control. Gold dust and iron sand require magnet release, an extremely rare Kekkei Genkai. You can't just grab a handful of sand and start dominating the battlefield. You have to be born with the ability, or have a literal chakra monster living inside you. And even though sand is insanely versatile, it has clear counters. Explosive clay can break its cohesion. Oil can make it crumble and lose control. Lightning-fast taijutsu can overwhelm the automatic defense if the attacker is fast enough. Lee proved this back in the Chunin exams when he overwhelmed Gaara purely with raw speed. Sand is powerful, absolutely. But it's not invincible. But once you master it, once you truly understand how to manipulate sand at a fundamental level, you turn into a walking defensive fortress with offensive power that can straight up level a battlefield. Gaara shielded the entire Tsunagakurei from an aerial bomb. The third Kazekage dominated an entire generation using iron sand. The fourth Kazekage used gold dust to fight a tailed beast head-on. The Sand series earns rank 7 because, while it's extremely powerful, it doesn't have the raw destructive output or completely game-breaking utility of the weapons ranked above it. But make no mistake, this is still one of the most terrifying weapon systems in all of Naruto. 6. Adamantine Staff. And this is where we officially step into truly legendary territory. Because this weapon isn't something you forge in a blacksmith's shop. It's a living being, Monkey King Enma, transforming himself into the perfect weapon for Hiruzen Sarutobi. Let's talk about durability first. This staff is diamond-level hard. Not pretty tough, not high durability, I mean literally as hard as diamond. When Hiruzen slams this thing down, it can crush almost anything. Bones? Shattered. Stone? Pulverized. Defensive techniques? Straight up broken through. And because it's that insanely hard, it's basically indestructible. That makes it an absolute top-tier defensive tool. You can block kunai, shuriken, even direct physical jutsu with zero fear of it breaking. But here's what pushes the adamantine staff way beyond just being a super hard stick. It can change size. It can extend, widen, grow bigger or longer whenever Hiruzen wants. In the anime, this staff extends far enough to physically shove the Ninetales out of Konohagakure. Let that sink in. It pushed a mountain-sized monster out of the village by simply extending forward. And Hiruzen used this ability beautifully. He could extend the staff to hit enemies from distances they couldn't even react to. He could widen it into a massive wall to block off entire areas. He could shrink it for close combat, then suddenly extend it in an instant to catch opponents completely off guard. But wait, there's more. Enma, even while in staff form, can still manifest parts of his body. Claws, fangs. Suddenly the staff you're blocking with starts growing teeth and tries to bite your face off. Yeah, that's insane. You think you're fighting a weapon, but you're actually fighting a sentient creature disguised as a weapon. It's basically a 1 versus 2 fight at all times. And then there's Adamantine Prison Wall. Enma can clone himself while in staff form, creating a massive cage made entirely of diamond-hard staffs that completely lock the enemy down. This is a prison built from the hardest material in the series, stacked in multiple overlapping layers. Once you're inside, you're done. Now here's the interesting part about the ranking. Why is the Adamantine staff only rank 6 when it's clearly one of the strongest weapons ever used? By arguably the strongest Hokage of his era. Because even though it's unbelievably powerful, it's still, at its core, a melee weapon. It doesn't have elemental hacks like the Gunbai. It doesn't have instant win conditions like the treasured tools. It doesn't multiply power like the pills. It's just an insanely durable, ridiculously versatile staff packed with brutal tricks. And there's one rare weakness. Enma can still feel pain. When Orochimaru's sword of Kusanagi pierced the staff form, Enma screamed in agony. That means if an enemy has a weapon sharp and strong enough, they can hurt not the weapon, but Enma himself. And if Enma takes too much damage, he can choose to detransform or return to the monkey realm, leaving Hiruzen without his weapon. But let's be real, those weaknesses are tiny compared to what the Adamantine staff offers. This is the weapon the professor used through decades of warfare to build his legendary reputation. It's not the flashiest weapon on this list, but it is absolutely one of the most reliable. 5. Gunbai. This fan is not a normal weapon. This is an Uchiha heirloom, passed down through generations, carved from a special spirit tree that was only used to make ritual instruments. It carries history, legacy, and an ability that makes it one of the most dangerous defensive weapons in the entire series. Let's talk about the core ability of the Gunbai. It can convert incoming chakra into wind release, and then reflect the attack straight back at the enemy. Picture this. You're a ninja firing a fireball jutsu at Madara. You pour all your chakra into it. Perfect aim. Clean shot. You think you've got him. Madara just lifts the fan, and suddenly your fireball turns into a violent gust of wind screaming back at you with the same power you put into it. Congratulations, you just killed yourself with your own jutsu. And this isn't theory. We've literally seen Madara use the Gunbai to reflect Naruto's attacks. We've seen it block a super mini-tailed beast ball without taking any visible damage. The Gunbai didn't struggle. It didn't crack. It just tanked it like it was a kunai. Effortless. But the Gunbai isn't just a shield. Madara used it like a mace, a club, straight up smashing skulls in close combat. And with the chain attached to the handle, he could swing it like a flail, massively increasing both range and unpredictability. Obito did this a lot, using the chain to guide the fan from weird angles that enemies simply couldn't read or react to. And here's the key point. The Gunbai doesn't care what kind of ninjutsu you use. Fire, reflected. Water, reflected. Lightning, reflected. Rasengan, reflected. Biju Dama, reflected. If the attack is made of chakra, the Gunbai can convert it and send it right back. It's basically a universal counter to almost every offensive jutsu in the series. Now think about the tactical nightmare this creates. If you're fighting someone holding the Gunbai, you're basically locked out of long-range ninjutsu. Anything you throw gets sent back at you. You're forced into close combat. And guess what? The Gunbai still works there as a heavy blunt weapon. So why is the Gunbai only ranked 5th if it can reflect almost everything? Because it has limits. The Gunbai needs chakra to work properly. If the user doesn't have massive chakra reserves, the reflection won't be effective, and it only reflects chakra-based attacks. Pure physical strikes, taijutsu, or weapons that aren't chakra-enhanced can still hit the user. That's an exploitable weakness if you know how to approach the fight. And compared to the top 4 weapons above it, the Gunbai lacks sheer scale. It's insanely strong, but it's also pretty straightforward. And let's be real, part of how broken it looks is because Obito and Madara are the ones using it. Uchiha are already masters of weapon combat to begin with. 4. Doping. Alright, slow down. Let me cook for a second. Yeah, everyone knows there are basic soldier pills in Naruto. Emergency heals. Stimulants that force your body past its normal limits and make you a bit stronger. Maybe a few times stronger at best. That's usually the ceiling. But then you've got the 3 colored pills. The Akamichi clan took this entire concept and pushed it straight into insane territory. 3 pills. Blue, yellow, red. Each one shoves your body further past the breaking point than it was ever meant to go. The blue pill is already wild. It massively boosts your chakra reserves. Suddenly, every jutsu hits harder, lasts longer, and you can spam techniques that would have drained you dry in a single use before. Your stamina skyrockets instantly. That alone is completely game-changing. And that's just pill number 1. Then comes the yellow pill. This one cranks your speed and reflexes up to levels that honestly shouldn't be physically possible. Choji, the slowest guy on the team, suddenly starts moving fast enough to compete in real serious combat. You go from background character energy to a legitimate threat just by swallowing one pill. That jump is absolutely ridiculous. And then there's the red pill, the butterfly mode trigger. This is where things get both horrifying and brilliant at the same time. The red pill burns your entire chakra reserve and your life force simultaneously. It doesn't care about balance. It doesn't care about safety. It just converts everything you have into raw power. We saw Choji use it against a member of the Sound 4 and end the fight in a single hit. One blow. Done. After taking the red pill, Choji becomes more than 100 times stronger. And that number isn't random. That same 100 times shows up again with the 8 gates and the gate of death. This is that level of amplification. Straight up suicidal tier power. This is what makes doping genuinely terrifying. It democratizes power. You don't need decades of training. You don't need a Kekkei Genkai. You don't need elite genetics. You just swallow a pill and suddenly you're punching way above your weight class. Instantly. Brutally. Unfairly. But the trade-off is vicious. Before Tsunade created an antidote, taking the red pill was basically signing your own death certificate. You would win the fight. No question. You'd absolutely crush your enemy, but you wouldn't live long enough to tell that story. It's the ultimate sacrifice play. Total all-in. And sometimes, tactically, that really is the correct call. Then Orochimaru takes this idea and pushes it even further. His Mind Awakening pill forces the cursed seal to evolve straight into level 2. No slow adaptation, no gradual buildup. Just instant, massive power right now. But the cost is insane. The seal infection rate spikes so hard it can kill you in minutes if it isn't handled perfectly. That's why the Sound 4 had to be sealed inside the 4 Black Fogs formation. They were put into a fake death state just to survive the process. And even then, survival wasn't guaranteed. It's basically Russian roulette with extra steps. But when it works, when you actually survive, you skip years of growth and jump straight into your final form. No training arc, no build-up. Just raw, finished power. So why does doping only rank 4th, even when it can multiply your strength by 100 times? Because of the cost. And because a Genin Choji multiplied by 100 is not the same thing as Might Guy multiplied by 100. The ceiling still matters. But don't get it twisted. Doping is still one of the most game-changing tools in the entire Naruto universe. It proves that with the right chemical cocktail, you can bridge the gap between average and elite. And that implication is absolutely terrifying for any military system that relies on long-term training and hierarchy. 3. Treasured Tools of Hagoromo. These are the 5 legendary tools that supposedly belong to the Sage of Six Paths himself, the guy who literally created ninjutsu. According to legend, anyone who fully wields these things can straight up surpass even the 5 Kage. That's the level we're talking about. Let's start with the most broken combo, Beni Hisago and Kokinjo. Beni Hisago is the red gourd. Kokinjo is the golden rope. And then you add Shichiseiken, the sword that can cut words. Yeah, actual words. Here's how this nightmare setup works. Every person has a word they've said the most in their entire life. When Kokinjo wraps around you, it records that word. Then Shichiseiken literally cuts that word out of your soul. Not metaphorically. Literally. Once that word is cut, you can't say it anymore. Your brain knows it, but your mouth just won't do it. And after that, Beni Hisago activates and sucks you straight into the gourd, sealing you inside its own pocket dimension. Fight over. Life paused. Now imagine you're in the middle of combat and suddenly you can't say fire, or jutsu, or help, or anything you rely on instinctively. You're cooked. Ninja fights are already chaotic and now your own soul is sabotaging you. And that's just part of the kit. Then we've got the Bashosen, the legendary fan. This thing can generate all 5 chakra natures. fire, wind, water, lightning, and earth. On demand. No training. No affinities required. No bloodline. You just swing it and unleash elemental devastation. Tenten used this thing to destroy one of Kakuzu's masks. And Kakuzu isn't some random nobody. He's an Akatsuki member with 5 hearts and 5 elemental affinities. Bishosen basically let Tenten borrow the power of a full 5 nature master instantly. That's absurd, that's straight up unfair. So yeah, these tools aren't just weapons. They're power shortcuts from a god-tier era. You don't need to master ninjutsu when you're holding artifacts from the man who invented it. That's why these tools sit at rank 3. Not because they're subtle, but because they're brutally, overwhelmingly, historically busted. And then there's Kohaku no Johei, arguably the most terrifying tool in the entire set. At first glance, it looks similar to Beni Hisago, but with one insane upgrade. It doesn't just seal targets, it can also heal whatever gets sealed inside it. That's huge. The third Raikage literally used Kohaku no Yohei to seal the 8 tails every time the beast went on a rampage. Let that sink in. A full-tailed beast. And the jar just sucked it in and sealed it like it was nothing, like sealing a random kunai. That's how busted this thing is. Now here's the real catch. All of these tools consume an enormous amount of chakra. A normal human trying to use them would straight up die from chakra exhaustion. Instantly cooked. The only reason the Gold and Silver brothers could wield them was because they had absolutely massive chakra reserves and were infused with Ninetails chakra after literally eating its flesh. On top of that, they're distant relatives of the Sage of Six Paths himself. That's the barrier to entry. You basically need near Jinchuriki level chakra just to activate these tools without dropping dead. But if you do have that chakra, if you can actually handle the cost, you're holding 5 different win conditions in your hands at the same time. So why are the treasured tools only ranked 3rd if they're this insanely powerful? Usability. The chakra cost is brutally prohibitive. Most ninja can't even touch these things without dying. And even if you do have the chakra, actually using 3 of the tools requires serious setup. They're overwhelming, but they're not simple point-and-click win buttons. Against a high IQ ninja like Shikamaru, pulling off these multi-step tools becomes way harder than it sounds. Honestly, they almost didn't even make the list. These are divine weapons. They should technically be in their own league alongside things like the Totsuka Blade or Nunoboko, but here's the difference. They're not that unreachable. These tools were passed down for centuries in Kumogakure's village treasures. They survived wars. They were stolen by legendary criminals. They were even fed to the Gedo statue at one point. And somehow, after all that insanity, they eventually ended up sitting in Tenten's weapon shop. But don't get it twisted. The treasured tools are still firmly in the conversation for the most broken weapons in Naruto. They have instant win conditions. They have lore backing straight from the literal god of ninjutsu. And in the right hands, they've already proven they can bring down Hokage level and Kage level opponents. 2. Scientific ninja tools. And yeah, this is easily one of the most controversial additions in the entire Naruto universe. Because these aren't ancient relics or legendary weapons passed down through bloodlines. This is modern technology, developed after the Fourth Great Ninja War, and it fundamentally threatens to flip the entire power structure of the shinobi world on its head. Let's start with the one everyone knows. The coat. The shinobi gauntlet. This thing is a wearable arm device that can store jutsu in scroll cartridges and fire them instantly on command. No hand signs, no chakra control training, no ninja education. A literal civilian can strap this thing on and launch a Rasengan. An A-rank jutsu that took Minato 3 full years to invent is now available with a single button press. That's not just broken, that's absurd. This is power democratization at its most extreme. In a world where strength traditionally requires bloodlines, decades of brutal training, or being chosen by destiny, scientific ninja tools look at all that and say, nah, skip it. They hand out Jonin-level firepower to anyone with enough money. At that point, you're not even changing the game anymore. You're straight up ending it. And the code is only the surface. The real nightmare is shinobi wear. These are bionic prosthetics built on advanced puppet engineering and infused with Hashirama Senju's cells. Artificial limbs with artificial chakra pathways that fully integrate with the human body like they were natural parts all along. You lose an arm in combat? Cool. Install a Hashirama cell prosthetic and now you're stronger than before. Bigger chakra reserves, enhanced physical power, and depending on compatibility, you might even unlock wood release. That's not recovery. That's a straight upgrade. And then you've got the advanced technology type tools, heat-insulated combat uniforms, remote-controlled drones, miniaturized communication devices. At this point, these aren't even ninja tools anymore. This is straight-up military-grade hardware adapted for shinobi warfare. What we're watching is the fusion of traditional ninja combat with modern military tech, and the result is honestly terrifying. Every other weapon on this list is insanely powerful, but they all require a specific kind of user. You need to be a Jinchuriki to properly wield the treasured tools. You need to literally sacrifice your life to use the red pill. You basically need to be Madara Uchiha to use the Gunbai at its full potential. There's always some massive gatekeeping involved. Scientific ninja tools don't have that problem. Anyone can use them. And honestly, the concept itself makes total sense. Technology has always existed in Naruto. The Rain Village was already heavily industrialized way back in Part 1, and the Asura Path of Pain is basically a walking weapons platform. This direction isn't random. It's logical and genuinely interesting. But here's the issue. Kishimoto once said he didn't include firearms in Naruto because if guns are too strong, death becomes cheap, and if they're too weak, they're pointless. Scientific ninja tools in Boruto fall into that exact same trap. In a normal shinobi war setting, these tools completely break the rules. They massively destabilize the balance of power. But instead of slowly developing that idea, refining it, and naturally rebalancing the system, Ikemoto shifted focus hard toward aliens. With the Otsutsuki power ceiling being so absurdly high, human technology ends up feeling insignificant by comparison. Scientific tools mostly get sidelined, and that's straight-up wasted potential. So why do scientific ninja tools still rank second, despite all that baggage? Because in pure terms of innovation and potential impact, nothing else even comes close. They represent a full paradigm shift in ninja warfare. This is the first weapon system on the entire list that can be scaled up and mass-produced to arm entire populations, and that implication is way more frightening than any single god-tier weapon. Now, if you think technology giving civilians Kage-level power deserves the #1 spot, or if you think scientific ninja tools are the biggest mistake Boruto ever made, drop it in the comments. And also, am I the only one who feels like Tenten, the literal weapon specialist of the series, should have played a role in tech development? Because that might be the biggest missed opportunity of all. 1. Chakra Cannon. This is the absolute peak of broken ninja weapons. A weapon system built for one purpose and one purpose only: destroy the moon, or straight up send it to another dimension. Let's set the context. In the last, Naruto the movie, Tonari, Otsutsuki is literally pulling the moon toward Earth. The entire moon. It's falling. If it hits, that's an extinction-level event, and the 4th Raikage was already prepared for this exact scenario. Hidden in the post-war era with cooperation from all the hidden villages was a last-resort weapon, the chakra cannon. This isn't a single gun. It's a collective weapon system that requires hundreds of shinobi channeling their chakra at the same time into 3 massive muzzles. This is the entire military might of the shinobi world focused into one concentrated point of destruction, and it has 2 firing modes, both of them completely insane. First mode, Chakra Diffusion Cannon. The 2 twin muzzles at the bottom fire a combined blue beam of chakra, which then diffuses into multiple smaller beams. These beams are designed to intercept and destroy the meteorites formed from the collapsing moon. The goal is to blast every single fragment out of the sky at once. Massive area defense on a ridiculous scale. But that's just the warm-up. The second mode is where things go absolutely off the rails. Chakra Transportation Cannon. The top muzzle forms a massive yellow orb of chakra with the ability to transport the entire moon into another dimension. Yeah, this weapon can grab an object with an almost incomprehensible amount of mass and just yeet it into another reality. Well, this thing was never even fired. Killer Bee refused to pull the trigger because Naruto was still on the moon. Naruto and his team managed to finish the mission and save Earth before the cannon ever activated. So we've never actually seen its full power in action. All we know is that the fourth Raikage, someone who has seen absolutely everything, fully believed this weapon could destroy or remove the moon. And in Naruto, when a Kage says a weapon can operate at planetary scale, you believe them. But does it have weaknesses? Oh, absolutely. It's immobile. It requires hundreds of shinobi working together. It can probably only be fired once before everyone involved is completely exhausted. And most importantly, it's useless in actual shinobi combat. You can't aim this thing at Madara Uchiha and pull the trigger. This is a strategic weapon, not a tactical one. But in terms of pure, absolute power, in terms of maximum possible impact, nothing else in the entire Naruto universe even comes close. And that's why, even though we never saw it fire, even though it has massive drawbacks, and even though it represents a level of destruction that hopefully never needs to be used again, the chakra cannon earns its place at rank 1. Amaterasu. Amaterasu is a Mangekyo Sharingan Dojutsu, and it's basically the absolute peak of fire release. This ability represents the material world and light, and it's designed as the direct opposite of Tsukuyomi. One rules reality and physical destruction, the other rules perception and the mind. Perfect balance, Uchiha style. Mechanically, Amaterasu works in the most broken way possible. The user creates black flames exactly at the point they're looking at. Not launched, not thrown, not traveled, it just appears. That's why in most situations, dodging Amaterasu is nearly impossible. If it spawns on you, you're already late. That said, with insane speed, it is possible to dodge, avoid, or even intercept the flames after the jutsu is cast. These flames are described as fires from hell, burning as hot as the sun itself, and they don't discriminate. Amaterasu burns literally anything. Solid objects, flesh, armor, even other flames, until nothing but ash is left. Across the series, the only consistent counters are defenses that physically separate the user from the flames, like Gaara's chakra-infused sand, or Naruto's version 1 chakra cloak. True to its mythic reputation, Amaterasu's flames are described as immortal and never-ending. You can't put them out with normal methods. They will keep burning relentlessly until the target is fully incinerated. The only person who can actually extinguish the flames is the original user. Amaterasu can also be sealed into another person's Sharingan, meaning the technique itself can be transferred. And it's not just an offensive nuke. Users can surround themselves with Amaterasu flames as a deterrent, creating a touch me and you die zone that shuts down physical attacks instantly. Using Amaterasu comes with a heavy cost. It puts extreme strain on the user, often causing their eyes to bleed. While the user can make Amaterasu incinerate targets almost instantly if they focus hard enough, the flames normally burn surprisingly slowly. That gives targets a slim chance to rip off burning clothes before the fire spreads, or if it's already too late, cut off the burning body part entirely. There are other defensive options, though most are extremely high tier. The flames can be pushed away, absorbed by the Rinnegan, absorbed via Kama, bypassed with certain space-time ninjutsu, or endured by being a 10 tails Jinchuriki. And while it's wildly impractical in combat, Amaterasu itself can also be sealed. Finally, Sasuke takes this ability even further. Thanks to his right Mangekyo Sharingan, he can actively control and shape Amaterasu's flames using blaze release, kagutsuchi, turning raw hellfire into a weapon with precision, form, and intent. Transcription seal, Amaterasu. This technique is straight up next-level Mangekyo nonsense. What it does is seal the Amaterasu technique inside someone else's Sharingan, not the user's own eye, another person's eye. Once Amaterasu is sealed into that person, the activation is completely involuntary. They don't choose to use it. They don't even control it. The moment that eye sees the specific target, the jutsu automatically fires. You can actually tell when this happens because the person's Sharingan temporarily changes shape, taking on the exact Mangekyo pattern of the original sealer. That's the visual confirmation that the trap just went live. And here's the most broken part. The target is pre-programmed. The original user decides in advance who Amaterasu will activate on. So when the condition is met, boom, the flames trigger instantly. No hand signs, no chakra buildup, no reaction time. Blaze release, kagutsuchi. Blaze release, kagutsuchi is the technique that gives shape and control to Amaterasu's black flames. Instead of just summoning hellfire and letting it burn, the user can actively manipulate the flames however they want. This is pure shape transformation, Mangekyo tier. In Sasuke Uchiha's case, the setup is clean and broken. His left Mangekyo casts Amaterasu, while his right Mangekyo controls and reshapes the flames. 2 eyes, 2 rolls, 0 waste. With Kagutsuchi, the user can mold the black flames into multiple forms, both for offense and defense. When using the ribcage stage of Susanoo, the user can manipulate the flames to completely cover the Susanoo, creating a defensive encampment wrapped in Amaterasu. Touch it, and you are instantly cooked. By converging the flames in front of themselves, the user can form a barrier made of spike-shaped black flames. This barrier doesn't just block attacks, it pierces and incinerates anyone dumb enough to make contact. The user can also hold the black flames directly in their hand without being burned, which is already insane. On top of that, the flames can be shaped into a flexible sword that launches spike-shaped flame projectiles every time it's swung. Kagutsuchi also lets the user stack Amaterasu with other techniques. The black flames can be used simultaneously with Chidori, massively boosting Chidori's destructive power. The user can also wrap the flames around a physical sword, dramatically increasing its cutting and burning potential. Bottom line, Amaterasu is raw, unstoppable destruction. Kagutsuchi is what happens when that destruction gets precision, control, and creativity. Blaze release. Susanoo Kagutsuchi. Blaze release. Susanoo Kagutsuchi is basically Kagutsuchi fully weaponized through Susanoo. Instead of just controlling black flames normally, Sasuke channels Kagutsuchi directly into Susanoo, using the orb of black flames held in Susanoo's secondary right hand to create weapons on demand. From that orb, Sasuke can form a black flame sword that Susanoo wields like a real weapon. This sword can stab straight through enemies and defenses, and whatever gets hit is instantly incinerated down to nothing. He can also fire Magatama-shaped projectiles from the orb in rapid volleys. These projectiles smash into targets, blasting them backward first, and then burning them away with black flames afterward. It's crowd control and execution at the same time. On top of that, this technique can also create black flame arrows, which are fired using Susanoo's bow, turning ranged combat into literal Amaterasu artillery. Blaze release, Yasaka Magatama. Blaze release, Yasaka Magatama is a more focused, high-speed application of the same concept. By using the orb of black flames in Susanoo's third hand, the user can rapidly generate multiple Magatama projectiles, each one made entirely out of black flames. When these projectiles hit, the effect is immediate and brutal. Targets are violently thrown off their feet, and then quickly incinerated on the spot. No delay, no escape, just impact, knockback, and total burn. Hino Kagutsuchi. Hino Kagutsuchi is a Mangekyo Sharingan dojutsu that belongs exclusively to Indra Otsutsuki's left eye. This isn't some knockoff ability, this is the proto-version, straight from the bloodline that everything else came from. In both appearance and function, Hino Kagutsuchi is extremely similar to Amaterasu. It lets Indra generate black flames directly at the focal point of his vision, meaning the fire doesn't travel. It instantly manifests exactly where he's looking. Same concept, same nightmare fuel. Beyond that, almost nothing is known about this technique. The lore is frustratingly thin. What is confirmed, though, is that these black flames failed to overpower Asura Otsutsuki's Amenomi Hashira. At some point, the flames faltered and couldn't break through it, which already tells you how absurdly broken Asura's defense was. So yeah, Hino Kagutsuchi is basically Amaterasu at the origin point, wielded by Indra himself. Mysterious, ancient, insanely powerful, and still not enough to brute force Amenomi Hashira. Kotoamatsukami. Kotoamatsukami is the signature dojutsu of Shisui Uchiha's 2 Mangekyo Sharingan. This isn't your regular genjutsu, this is extremely powerful, insanely subtle mind control, the kind that doesn't feel like mind control at all. The ability lets the user enter the mind of anyone within their field of view and manipulate them by feeding them phantom experiences. The victim genuinely believes they're acting on their own free will. No coercion, no resistance, no warning signs. That's why Kotoamatsukami is considered a top-tier, highest-caliber genjutsu. The target has zero awareness they're being controlled. To show just how absurd this thing is, Kotoamatsukami was strong enough to break Kabuto Yakushi's control over Edo Tensei Itachi, and Kabuto's control was considered almost absolute. After the crow activated the technique, Itachi pointed out that Kotoamatsukami normally needs at least 10 years before it can be used again. That cooldown can be drastically reduced if the user has Hashirama Senju's chakra, even if they're not an Uchiha and only transplanted the eye. This was proven by Danzo Shimura. That said, even with Hashirama's cells boosting stamina, Danzo himself admitted that Kotoamatsukami still cannot be used multiple times in a single day. This was Shisui Uchiha's ultimate technique, and because of that, it was heavily desired by Danzo. Danzo eventually stole Shisui's right eye and implanted it into his own right eye socket to gain access to the dojutsu. Shisui later entrusted his remaining eye to Itachi Uchiha. Itachi implanted that eye into the eye socket of one of his crows. That crow was later forcibly sealed inside Naruto Uzumaki, and it was rigged to only emerge when it encountered Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan. On top of that, Itachi pre-programmed the eye so that when Kotoamatsukami activated, it would issue a single command to the target: protect Konoha. Itachi's original plan was for this genjutsu to be used on Sasuke, in case Sasuke ever turned against the village. Itachi assumed that by then, Sasuke would have transplanted eyes to obtain an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, which would trigger the crow. Instead, the technique was used on Itachi himself. After being reincarnated via Edo Tensei, Itachi accidentally activated his Mangekyo when he encountered Naruto during the Fourth Shinobi World War, causing the crow to emerge and cast Kotoamatsukami on him. Unlike most Sharingan-based genjutsu, Kotoamatsukami does not require eye contact. This was clearly shown when Danzo cast it on Mifune without even removing the bandages covering his right eye. During the 5 Kage summit, the 5th Mizukage commented that she couldn't help but believe there was a connection between Kotoamatsukami and the mysterious power that once controlled Yagura Karatachi, the 4th Mizukage. Object Manipulation Technique. This is a Mangekyo Sharingan technique that lets the user telekinetically control objects, but with a twist. Before controlling anything, the user has to mark the object with a seal on their hand. Once it's marked, that object is basically remote controlled. Using this ability, Shin Uchiha showed some absolutely unhinged applications. He could freely manipulate his medical tools in mid-air to perform surgery without touching anything. He also used multiple scalpels to assemble makeshift prosthetic limbs and weapons, turning surgical gear into straight-up combat equipment. On top of that, Shin could even manipulate his clone's body, moving it like a puppet and using it as a human shield to protect himself. In the anime, Shin is shown using this technique without even activating his Mangekyo Sharingan, which makes the ability look even more unnatural and unsettling. Susanoo. Susanoo is straight up the strongest ability you can unlock once you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan in both eyes. This isn't some random power-up either. It's a legendary technique passed down through generations of the Uchiha clan. When activated, Susanoo manifests as a massive humanoid avatar made entirely of chakra. It forms around the user and fights for them, basically acting as a physical extension of the user's will. Early on, Susanoo moves together with the user, almost glued to them. But once it's more developed, the user is literally suspended inside it, moving wherever Susanoo goes. That connection turns Susanoo into an insanely durable living shield, and the more complete the form, the harder it becomes to break through. Now here's the crazy part. Susanoo isn't just a normal barrier. It can selectively block things. The user can still perform jutsu from inside it, and their attacks pass through Susanoo effortlessly. Allies can be brought inside Susanoo if the user allows it, and the user can also exit it whenever they want. But that flexibility comes with a weakness. If an enemy manages to slip past Susanoo even slightly and grabs the user directly, they can actually rip them out of the avatar. With higher mastery, even the early ribcage stage becomes way more durable. For example, the 4th Raikage was able to crack Sasuke's ribcage Susanoo, but couldn't crack Madara's, showing just how much user skill matters. If Susanoo gets damaged, it does not regenerate. The only way to fix it is either advancing to the next stage or completely dispersing it and summoning it again. Also, Susanoo only blocks physical attacks. That means visual genjutsu or auditory techniques can still hit the user, and unless the legs are fully formed, the user is still vulnerable to attacks from below. Susanoo absolutely drains chakra like crazy as long as it's active. Sasuke describes using it as feeling pain in every single cell of his body, and that pain gets worse the longer it's used and the more advanced the form becomes. Since it's a Manjekyo ability, it also puts heavy strain on the user's eyes. However, here's a wild detail. The Manjekyo Sharingan doesn't actually need to be active to use Susanoo. Madara literally used it without any eyes at all, which is completely ridiculous. Susanoo has multiple developmental stages, and experienced users cycle through all of them every time they summon it. They stack advanced layers on top of earlier ones, or strip them away depending on the situation. They can also choose to stop at any stage. At the most basic level, users can manifest just parts of the skeleton, like a ribcage for defense or a single arm to interact with the environment. Once the full skeleton forms, it gains muscles, then skin, eventually shaping into a full humanoid body. Early on, usually only the upper half appears. Legs typically show up only once it reaches a complete humanoid form, and not every user can even reach that level. Next, armor forms around the humanoid, giving Susanoo a look similar to a Yamabushi warrior. Then comes the final stage. By stabilizing the chakra completely, the user creates the complete body Susanoo, also known as the perfect Susanoo. This is the absolute peak of Manjekyo power. In this form, Susanoo gains a Tengu-like nose, wings for flight, layered robes, and ornate armor. It's generally the size of a tailed beast, except for Hagoromo's, which was roughly the size of the 10 tails itself. At this level, Susanoo has power on par with a tailed beast, easily leveling massive mountains. When enhanced with 6-path chakra, it can casually destroy small planetoids, no problem. Users can also channel their own techniques directly through the complete body Susanoo, and can even shape it around the 9 tails to massively boost both offense and defense. And you have to know, Susanoo is never a simple copy-paste ability. Each user manifests a unique version, differing in color, design, and weaponry, yet certain rules remain constant. All Susanoo draw inspiration from Japanese Tengu mythology. Every manifestation has 2 sets of arms, with the complete body form allowing 1 extra pair to transform into wings. Each hand bears 6 fingers instead of 5, and every Susanoo wields at least 1 sword. This universal framework sets the stage, but the variations are where things become extraordinary. Itachi's Susanoo is one of the most refined yet unfair builds in the series. In the manga, it appears yellow, while the anime depicts it as red in skeletal and armored stages and orange in humanoid form. The humanoid face is framed by long hair and a chin appendage resembling a pharaoh's beard. Once armored, the design fully embraces Tengu traits, complete with a long nose and Magatama earrings. Weapon-wise, Itachi technically has a curved blade like a tanto, but his true arsenal is far more broken. His primary right hand wields the sword of Totsuka, an ethereal sealing weapon stored in a sake jar held by his second right hand. Anyone pierced by it is trapped forever in a genjutsu-like world of drunken dreams. His primary left hand carries the Yata mirror, a shield that instantly adapts to nullify any attack. Black Zetsu himself declared that wielding both made Itachi essentially invincible. For ranged combat, Itachi can unleash Yasaka Magatama. Sasuke's Susanoo contrasts sharply, radiating aggression and hatred. In the manga, it begins dark blue, but most depictions show it purple, reflecting his darker emotions. While Itachi's feels composed, Sasuke's looks demonic, with horns, a long chin appendage, and a malicious grin. Early armored forms resemble Itachi's, but feature jagged teeth. After gaining the eternal Manjekyo Sharingan, the design grows grotesque, with a beak-like mouth and ghastly features. In complete body form, Sasuke's Susanoo becomes colossal, rivaling Kurama after Naruto receives Hagoromo's chakra. Its helmet sports a long Tengu nose, spikes above the eyes, cheek gaps, and a chin slit. With his Rinnegan, Its wings can even block the infinite Tsukuyomi's light. Drawing on tailed beast power, Sasuke enters Indra Susanoo, where armor recedes to expose the humanoid core. Here, the sword manifests afterward, catching foes off guard. This blade can be hurled as a projectile and explode into lightning pillars large enough to engulf Kurama. Sasuke's weaponry evolves with each stage. Sabers in developmental forms, an odachi in humanoid form, and dual katana in complete body form. His signature weapon, however, is the bow mounted on his left wrist. Arrows are drawn from an orb in his right hand and fired at absurd speed. Only Sage Mode Kabuto ever dodged one. Sasuke augments his arsenal with black flames in armored form and lightning in complete body form, channeling techniques like Chidori and Great Fireball directly through Susanoo. Madara's Susanoo is pure intimidation. Appearing dark blue, it is built from two fused halves, each with its own face. The front face bears tusks and elongated lower canines, while the back face has upper canines and a horn. In armored form, the forehead splits, revealing only the eyes. Notably, Madara's armored Susanoo always forms the tiger hand seal with its front hands. It is the largest armored Susanoo ever shown. In complete body form, it gains a long Tengu nose, facial lines, and tied-up hair. Its scale is absurd, towering hundreds of meters and dwarfing even the meteor Madara dropped during the war. It wields kris-like blades in each right hand, which can be thrown as guided projectiles. In the anime, swords manifest in all four arms. Strikes leave blue chakra trails and shockwaves capable of annihilating armies. Complete body swords resemble katana or tachi, stored in sheaths held by secondary arms. One swing can slice through multiple mountains. Madara also uses Yasaka Magatama for devastating ranged attacks. Kakashi Hatake's Susanoo appears only in complete body form. It has a Tengu nose, forehead protector-like plating, 2 locks of hair, a chin hole, and a scar mark mirroring Kakashi's own. It wields a katana and terrifying Mangekyo-shaped shuriken that warp away anything they touch. In the anime, Hagoromo's light blue Susanoo reaches complete body form, wielding chakra blades. Its size rivals the Ten-Tails. Shisui Uchiha had a green Susanoo featuring blade-like appendages on shoulders, face, and forearms. Its right arm wields a drill-like lance, which Shisui can coat in fire to create a vortex of flames, or unleash chakra needles. Tengai Shinsei. Tengai Shinsei is a move that's honestly beyond ridiculous. To activate it, the user weaves 3 hand seals at the same time, coordinating perfectly between themselves and their Susanoo. That alone already tells you this jutsu is not meant for normal humans. Once activated, the user straight up drags massive meteorites out of the upper atmosphere and pulls them crashing down toward a specific target on the ground. These meteors fall one after another, following the exact same trajectory. And here's the terrifying part. If someone somehow manages to stop the first meteor, the user can immediately summon another one, slamming it directly into the first, guaranteeing that both meteors still crash into the intended location. The sheer impact of Tengai Shinsei was absolutely catastrophic. It completely devastated a huge portion of the 4th Division, and the shockwaves were so violent that the tremors were felt all the way from the border of the Land of Lightning to the Allied Shinobi Forces headquarters. That's country-level scale destruction. On top of that, the technique was powerful enough to completely shatter Madara's Susanoo and obliterate his physical body in the process. Not damage, not crack. Straight up erased. Transcription seal, Izanagi. Transcription seal. Izanagi is an insanely broken Mangekyo Sharingan technique that lets the user seal the jutsu Izanagi directly inside someone's Sharingan. Once it's sealed, the technique just sits there, dormant, waiting. Here's the terrifying part. After being planted inside the target, Izanagi will activate automatically and involuntarily once certain conditions are met. Those conditions are pre-programmed by the user ahead of time, meaning the target doesn't get a say in when it triggers. It goes off exactly when it's supposed to. Madara Uchiha used this technique on his own right eye, setting it up to activate after his death. When the conditions were fulfilled, Izanagi kicked in and rewrote his death into nothing more than a dream. He didn't survive the fight. He straight up edited reality after dying. Tsukuyomi. Tsukuyomi is a Mangekyo Sharingan dojutsu, and easily one of the most brutally powerful genjutsu ever created. This technique represents the spiritual world and darkness, and it exists as the direct opposite of Amaterasu. One burns the body. This one absolutely breaks the soul. Once Itachi Uchiha makes eye contact with a target, Tsukuyomi activates instantly. The victim is dragged into an illusion completely designed by Itachi, where he has total control. What makes Tsukuyomi truly horrifying is Itachi's unmatched control over the perception of time. Inside the illusion, he can force someone to experience days of torture in just a few real-world seconds. That torture can be non-stop stabbing, or being forced to relive the same traumatic moments again and again, endlessly. Visually, Tsukuyomi usually appears as a reversed grayscale world, and in the anime it's often shown with a blood-red moon hanging in a red sky, which already tells you this place is not meant to be survived mentally. Because of how fast Tsukuyomi activates, and the raw power of the Mangekyo Sharingan behind it, normal genjutsu countermeasures straight up don't work. Using Tsukuyomi consumes a massive amount of chakra, to the point where Itachi is basically advised not to keep fighting afterward. Like all Mangekyo techniques, it also puts severe strain on his eyes, causing his vision to blur. But compared to what happens to the victim, that cost is nothing. Most people hit by Tsukuyomi are immediately rendered comatose once the illusion ends. Sharingan users can resist losing consciousness for a short time, but only extremely skilled Sharingan users can actually break free from Tsukuyomi at all. As for healing the damage, it's almost impossible. Tsunade is the only known person capable of repairing the psychological trauma caused by Tsukuyomi. In Akatsuki Hiden, Itachi theorizes that love itself can revive victims. His logic is that since Tsukuyomi destroys the spirit, strong emotional bonds that reconnect the spirit can undo its effects. According to Itachi Shinden, Book of Dark Night, time inside Tsukuyomi moves at 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1,000,000th of real-world time. That's not exaggeration. That's the actual ratio. In the novel, Itachi uses Tsukuyomi on Izumi Uchiha, forcing her to live through decades of a happy, complete life in just a few moments of real time. She grows old inside the illusion, lives her entire life, and when she dies of old age within Tsukuyomi, her real body dies as well. Ohirume. Ohirume is a Mangekyo Sharingan dojutsu exclusive to Sarada Uchiha. And yeah, this ability is absolutely unreal. Once activated, Sarada can create up to 4 black spheres, each with a diameter ranging anywhere from 5 to 250 centimeters. Now here's why these spheres are terrifying. Each one has a gravitational pull that makes zero sense for its size. The gravity is massively disproportionate to its actual mass, allowing Sarada to generate extremely powerful gravitational forces, and she has full control over it. She can pull in weapons, jutsu, and even living beings. By tweaking the gravity, she can pin enemies against the spheres and crush them, or straight up detonate the spheres to cause an explosion. There is, however, a precise limitation. Only targets that are directly caught in Sarada's line of sight are affected by the gravity. But here's the catch. If the target is a living being, Sarada herself also becomes affected by that same gravitational pull. To counter this drawback, she can carefully control all 4 spheres at once to balance the gravity acting on her body, allowing her to levitate. By moving in sync with the spheres, she can also fly at insanely high speeds, in a way that's directly comparable to the Otsutsuki. Like most Mangekyo abilities, Ohirume comes with a brutal cost. It consumes a tremendous amount of chakra, and it causes progressive eyesight deterioration that eventually leads to blindness. When Sarada amplifies the gravitational force of a sphere, the strain becomes so intense that her Mangekyo eye literally bleeds. The very first time she used Ohirume, the exhaustion was so extreme that she collapsed unconscious afterward. According to Koji Kashin, Sarada awakening this technique is one of the most critical requirements for fighting the human god trees. In other words, Ohirume isn't just strong. It's being positioned as a necessary weapon for the final tier threats. Kamui. Kamui is a Mangekyo Sharingan ability that lets the user send objects and people to and from a separate dimension. Every transfer is marked by that iconic spiraling void, where the target gets twisted and warped as it's pulled between dimensions. It looks freaky because it is freaky. Anything that enters Kamui's dimension becomes completely untraceable. You can't sense them. You can't detect their chakra. As far as the world is concerned, they straight up don't exist anymore. When targets are expelled from Kamui's dimension, the force varies. Sometimes they just appear calmly at the exit point. Other times, they get launched out violently. This is why storing weapons like shuriken inside Kamui turns it into an offensive tool. Obito can eject them at high speed, like dimensional bullets. Kamui is also the only way in or out of its dimension. That means if you get sent there, you're trapped until the user decides to let you leave. Obito sometimes even used genjutsu on prisoners inside Kamui just to keep them mentally suppressed. Because of this, Kamui's dimension also works as a perfect safe house. If you're hiding there, the only way someone can reach you is by using Kamui themselves. Now here's where it gets insane. Obito's two Mangekyo Sharingan spent years with different users, Obito himself and Kakashi Hatake. Because of that, Obito and Kakashi are basically immune to each other's Kamui. One can use Kamui on the other, but the other can immediately Kamui themselves out. This also lets them block or counter each other's Kamui attempts on third parties. At one point, while Obito was stuck in the purgatory, he used Kamui to temporarily return his soul to Earth, long enough to help Kakashi by lending him his Sharingan. Yeah, Kamui even works on a soul level. Obito's right Mangekyo grants a short-range Kamui. He mostly uses it on himself, sucking his own body into the eye to enter Kamui's dimension, then reappearing wherever he wants. He uses this either to escape attacks instantly or travel massive distances. He can teleport at will, without pre-marking a destination. That's why people straight up call it better than Flying Thunder God. Obito can also suck other people into Kamui through his eye, either alongside himself or by themselves. And fun fact, it's actually faster for him to Kamui others than to Kamui himself. Usually he touches his targets, but this rule is not always consistent. The second ability of the right eye is the famous intangibility. When activated, any part of Obito's body that would collide with matter is automatically sent to Kamui's dimension instead. His body phases through everything. Anything he's touching, clothes, weapons, even other people, also becomes intangible. He uses this mostly for defense, letting attacks pass through him harmlessly. Early on, when he was acting as Toby, he even pretended to feel pain just to mess with his enemies. He can also use intangibility to walk through barriers and obstacles, extend the reach of his attacks by phasing weapons like the Gunbai through objects, travel underground, and ambush enemies from below. There are limits, though. Because the transfer happens automatically, Obito can't physically interact with anything he wasn't touching before activating the ability. If he wants to use taijutsu, he has to turn solid again. That said, he can still use ninjutsu while phasing. Other weaknesses we have to know include, he can only stay intangible for about 5 minutes. While intangibility is active, he cannot use Kamui teleportation. There's a tiny window between becoming solid and teleporting where he's vulnerable. Enemies can counter this by transferring themselves or their attacks into Kamui's dimension, allowing them to damage his phased body parts. When Obito becomes the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, he completely loses the ability to phase through objects with Kamui. At one point, Obito also showed an unspecified method of canceling Kakashi's left eye Kamui from a distance, stopping Kakashi from decapitating the demonic statue of the outer path without touching it or being nearby. The left Mangekyo uses a long-range Kamui. The user looks at a target and creates a barrier space around it. The size of this barrier is adjustable. When the user focuses, everything inside that space gets pulled to the center and sent to Kamui's dimension. Early on, Kakashi is terrible at it. He misses a lot. Even when he hits, the barrier is often too small to pull in the full target. Over time, he gets way better. teleporting projectiles mid-flight, and creating barriers large enough to teleport the demonic statue's head. He can also selectively teleport specific body parts, mutilating enemies instantly and causing fatal injuries. There is no defense against this, except Obito's right eye Kamui, which can nullify it. Eventually, Kakashi learns to create the barrier around himself, allowing him to teleport just like Obito. Because Kakashi isn't an Uchiha, Kamui costs him a ridiculous amount of chakra. It takes time to charge, and he can only use it a limited number of times per day. At first, his limit is 3 uses per day, later increased to an unknown amount. Repeated use also damages his vision, eventually making his eyes bleed. When Kakashi receives chakra from the Nine Tails, Kamui becomes faster, usable more often, and strong enough to affect targets as large as the Eight Tails. Kakashi estimates Kurama's chakra makes Kamui 3 times stronger than normal. Madara Uchiha later steals Obito's Mangekyo from Kakashi to access Kamui's dimension. Unlike Obito, Madara can still use Kamui even as the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. When both eyes Kamui are used on the same target, either by one user or 2 working together, the teleportation speed is doubled. With both eyes, users can also create massive portals that allow other people to travel through. Normally, Kamui only connects its dimension to Earth, but it can be synchronized with other space-time ninjutsu, letting the user travel to entirely different dimensions. Doing this, however, requires a huge amount of chakra. The 2 Kamui abilities can be used separately, but in coordination. Obito once used left eye Kamui to sync with Yomotsu Hirasaka, then used right eye Kamui to teleport to that dimension, and finally, with both Mangekyo, users can activate Susanoo, which allows them to create Kamui Shuriken.